I never thought my children would show up at my door with a lawyer trying to steal the beach house I'd just bought. For 37 years, they'd forgotten every single Mother's Day, leaving me with nothing but silence and empty mailboxes. But this year, when I finally stopped waiting and bought myself the oceanfront property I dreamed of since childhood, suddenly they remembered I existed. What they didn't know was that Officer Martinez was sitting in my kitchen, my security cameras were rolling, and their grandmother was recording everything from the guest bedroom. The morning sun cast long shadows across my kitchen table as I traced my finger along the rim of my coffee cup, the same way I'd done every Mother's Day for nearly 4 decades. My name is Kate, and at 67 years old, I'd become an expert at pretending the silence didn't hurt. Richard, my husband of 42 years, had passed away 5 winters ago, leaving me with our 3 children and a lifetime of memories. Thomas, our eldest at 45, had followed his father's footsteps into medicine. He was a respected surgeon at Johns Hopkins, the kind of son other mothers bragged about at grocery stores. Jennifer, 43, had carved her path as a corporate lawyer in Manhattan, her name on the letterhead of a firm that handled multi-million-dollar mergers. Matthew, my baby at 40, had surprised us all by founding a tech startup in Silicon Valley before his 30th birthday. 3 successful children. The American dream realized, and not one of them could remember to call their mother on Mother's Day. The pattern had started early back when they were teenagers. Thomas had baseball tournaments that somehow always fell on the second Sunday of May. Jennifer had debate competitions or study groups that couldn't be rescheduled. Matthew, lost in his world of computers and coding, simply forgot. Richard would pat my shoulder and say those same words every year as I stared at the silent phone. They love you, Kate. They're just busy building their lives. That's what we raised them to do. I believed him then. I made excuses for them, rationalized their absence. When other mothers at church showed off their Mother's Day bouquets, I'd smile and mention how Thomas had just performed a life-saving surgery, or how Jennifer had won another impossible case. I never mentioned that I hadn't heard their voices in months. To fill the emptiness, I started volunteering at Sunset Manor, the nursing home on Elm Street. Every Mother's Day, I'd arrive with homemade cookies and spend the day with residents whose families couldn't visit. But even there, surrounded by forgotten souls, I met women whose children drove hours just to spend an hour with them. Margaret, in room 212, received calls from her son in Japan every Sunday without fail. Rose down the hall had grandchildren who sent her handmade cards from across the country. After Richard died, the loneliness transformed into something harder to bear. The house felt too big, too quiet, too full of echoes. The children came for the funeral, of course. They stood in black suits and dresses, speaking in hushed tones about arrangements and schedules. They stayed for the will reading, too, their attention sharp, when Mr. Brennan, Richard's attorney, opened the manila envelope. Richard had been prudent. The house was paid off and worth $700,000 in our Connecticut suburb. His life insurance policy yielded $500,000. His retirement accounts held another $300,000. The children leaned forward as Mr. Brennan read the distributions. The house and all remaining assets go to my beloved wife, Catherine Marie Henderson, to ensure her comfort and security for all her days. The disappointment in my children's faces was subtle but unmistakable. Thomas's jaw tightened. Jennifer's manicured nails drummed against her leather portfolio. Matthew exchanged a look with his wife Sharon that spoke volumes. They left that afternoon citing work obligations and flight schedules. The calls became even less frequent. The visits stopped entirely. Mother's Days continued to pass in silence, but now I understood why. Without Richard as the bridge between us, and with no immediate inheritance to claim I had become invisible to them. It was while cleaning out Richard's study 3 years after his death that I found the leather journal hidden behind his medical textbooks. His handwriting, usually so precise from years of writing prescriptions, was emotional, here personal. Kate deserves her ocean view. One entry read, "She gave up her dreams of living by the beach to raise our children in the best school district. She never complained, never asked for anything for herself. I've been saving quietly. Someday I'll surprise her with a house where she can hear the waves. Tucked between the pages were real estate listings from coastal towns, circled prices, calculation sheets. Richard had been planning this for 20 years. A secret savings account statement showed $150,000 set aside for Kate's beach dream. I wept that night not from sadness, but from the recognition that someone had seen me, truly seen me, even when I'd become invisible to everyone else. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor. Ruth Patterson, my next-door neighbor for 35 years, stood at my door with a worn spiral notebook. "I've been debating whether to show you this," she said, settling into Richard's old chair. "But after watching you come home alone yesterday from another Mother's Day at the nursing home, I think you need to see it." She opened the notebook, revealing page after page of dates and observations, all in her careful cursive. "I started keeping track 20 years ago," Ruth explained. "Every holiday, every birthday, every time those children of yours should have been here and weren't. Richard asked me to stop, once said it wasn't my business, but I told him someone should witness what was happening to you." The entries were methodical. May 13, 2001, Mother's Day. Kate left at 8 a.m. with cookies for nursing home. No visitors. Returned at 6 p.m. Page after page documented my solitude, creating a paper trail of abandonment that I'd never allowed myself to fully acknowledge. "Why," I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Ruth reached across and squeezed my hand. "Because someday, Kate, you're going to need to stop making excuses for them. And when that day comes, you'll need to remember that this pattern is real, not something you're imagining or exaggerating. You deserve better." I took the notebook home that night and read every entry. 20 years of missed opportunities documented by a neighbor who had shown more concern for my well-being than my own children. As I closed the notebook, I made a decision. It was time to stop waiting for them to remember me. It was time to remember myself. The phone call came on a gray Tuesday morning in November. Dorothy Hendricks, my father's sister and my favorite aunt, had passed away quietly in her sleep at 92. The lawyer's voice was gentle but professional, as he informed me that I needed to come to Boston for the will reading. I hadn't expected anything from Aunt Dorothy's estate. She'd lived modestly in her Beacon Hill townhouse, wearing the same wool coats for decades and clipping coupons despite her comfortable situation. What I treasured were the memories of summer visits as a child, helping her tend the rooftop garden and listening to her stories about traveling the world as a young nurse. Mr. Jonathan Brennan's law office occupied the third floor of a building overlooking the common. Unlike the modern glass towers surrounding it, this office breathed old Boston money with its mahogany panels and leather-bound books. The secretary offered me tea in delicate china as I waited the only family member present for the reading. Mrs. Henderson. Mr. Brennan began once we were seated in his private office. "Your aunt left very specific instructions regarding her estate. She updated her will just 6 months ago after what she described as an illuminating Thanksgiving." He slid a folder across the polished desk. My hands trembled as I read the numbers. Dorothy's estate was worth $2.8 million. The townhouse alone was valued at $1.5 million. Her investment accounts, carefully managed over 7 decades, held the rest. "She left everything to you, Mrs. Henderson. The house, the investments, her art collection, even her grandmother's jewelry. There's also this letter." The envelope was cream-colored, my name written in Dorothy's distinctive hand. Inside, her words made me reach for the tissues Mr. Brennan quietly provided. "Dearest Kate," the letter began. "Last Thanksgiving, I watched you arrive at my home alone again, making excuses for your children's absence. You brought homemade pie and that forced smile you've perfected over the years. As you helped me in the kitchen, I heard the pain in your voice. When you explained that Thomas was on call, Jennifer had a client emergency, and Matthew was in Shanghai for business. I've watched your children ignore you for years, my dear. I've seen you pour endless love into 3 people who can't bother to send a card or make a phone call. Richard was a good man, but he enabled their behavior by making excuses. Now that he's gone, they've shown their true colors. You were the only one who visited me these last 10 years. Every month without fail, you drove 3 hours each way to spend a day with an old woman. You never asked for anything, never hinted about money or inheritance. You came because you cared. This money is my gift to you, not them. Use it to finally live for yourself. Buy that beach house Richard was always planning. Take those art classes you gave up. Travel to the places you've only seen in magazines. You've spent 67 years putting everyone else first. It's time to choose yourself. And Kate, your children will come running when they learn about this money. Don't let them guilt you into sharing what they never earned. True family isn't about blood. It's about showing up. All my love, Aunt Dorothy. I sat in that office for 20 minutes, reading and rereading her words. Mr. Brennan waited patiently, occasionally refilling my teacup. "There's more," he said eventually. "Your aunt hired a private investigator last year. She wanted to understand your children's financial situations before making her final decisions. The reports are here if you want them." Part of me didn't want to know, but a stronger part needed to understand. The reports were thorough and devastating. Thomas, despite his surgeon's salary, was drowning in debt from a gambling addiction he'd hidden for years. His wife had filed for separation after discovering he'd remortgaged their house twice. Jennifer's successful facade hid her involvement in questionable billing practices at her firm. An investigation was pending. Matthew's tech startup had been hemorrhaging money for 3 years, propped up by increasingly desperate investor loans that were coming due. All three were financially desperate, and all three had been circling me like vultures waiting for my eventual demise to solve their problems. I left Boston that day with a cashier's check and a new understanding of my children. The drive home gave me time to think and plan. I wouldn't tell them about Dorothy's inheritance immediately. I needed to prepare for what was coming. Over the following weeks, I noticed things I'd previously missed or dismissed. Thomas called for the first time in 4 months, his voice unusually warm as he asked about my health and mentioned new research about cognitive decline in seniors. He suggested I should see a specialist he knew just for a checkup. Jennifer sent an email with links to articles about the dangers of elderly people living alone. She mentioned that her firm had an excellent elder law department that could help me plan for the future, ensure my assets were protected. Her concern would have been touching if it hadn't been so transparently motivated. Matthew's approach was different. His wife Sharon began calling weekly, her voice dripping with false sweetness. She asked about my daily routine, whether I was remembering to take medications, if I ever felt confused or overwhelmed. During one call, she casually inquired about my banking offering to help me set up automatic bill payments, since technology can be so confusing for your generation. The most alarming discovery came from my doctor during my annual checkup. Dr. Sarah Chen, who'd been my physician for 15 years, pulled me aside after the appointment. "Kate, I need to tell you something off the record," she said, closing her office door. "Your son Thomas has called 3 times requesting your medical records. He claimed you'd signed a release form, but when my staff asked for documentation, he became agitated. He's also submitted reports suggesting you've been showing signs of dementia. Kate, in all my years treating you, I've never seen any indication of cognitive decline." "What kind of report?" I asked, though I suspected the answer. "Missed appointments that don't exist in our system. Claims that you've been forgetting to pay bills or taking medications incorrectly. He even suggested you'd been making unusual large purchases. Kate, is there something going on I should know about?" I made a decision then to trust her with part of the truth. Not about Dorothy's inheritance, but about my concerns regarding my children's sudden interest in my well-being. "Thank you for telling me," I said. "I think my children may be having some financial difficulties. Could you document this conversation and their attempts to access my records?" "Already done," Dr. Chen assured me. "And Kate, if you need any reports confirming your excellent mental and physical health, just ask." The next step was visiting my own lawyer. Patricia Hartley came highly recommended and specialized in elder law from the protection perspective. Her office in Stamford was modern and efficient, unlike Mr. Brennan's old-world elegance. "I see this more often than you'd think," Patricia said after I'd explained my situation. "Children who ignore their parents for decades suddenly become concerned about cognitive decline when they smell money. Let's make sure you're protected." We spent 3 hours creating safeguards, power of attorney documents that would only activate under specific circumstances with multiple doctor confirmations, a trust that would protect my assets, security measures for my bank accounts. Patricia also gave me a small digital recorder. "Connecticut is a one-party consent state," she explained. "You can legally record any conversation you're part of. Given what you've told me, I'd suggest you start documenting everything." I took her advice. The recordings began piling up. Thomas probing about my finances during a rare phone call. Jennifer suggesting I might be happier in a senior community where professionals could monitor me. Sharon pretending she'd noticed me seeming confused during conversations that never happened. The pattern crystallized when I discovered they'd been meeting. My former student Amy Chen managed a restaurant in Westport where my children had been gathering monthly. She recognized me when I came in for lunch and pulled me aside. "Mrs. Henderson, I don't mean to overstep, but I waited on your children last week. They had a private room and were discussing something about conservatorship and asset protection. They had documents spread across the table. I thought you should know." She even showed me the reservation history. 6 months of monthly meetings, always the first Wednesday, always the private room. My 3 children, who couldn't coordinate a single Mother's Day visit in decades, were meeting regularly to plan my financial future without me. The final piece of evidence came from an unexpected source. Harold Wells, a realtor in the coastal town of Sunset Cove, called my home one afternoon. "Mrs. Henderson, I'm sorry to bother you, but I felt you should know something. Your son Thomas and daughter Jennifer visited last month about a beachfront property I have listed. They were very interested until they learned it was in your name they'd need to purchase it. They asked many questions about elderly sellers and conservatorships. When I wouldn't cooperate with what seemed like questionable intentions, they became quite unpleasant. I've been in real estate 40 years, and I know when something doesn't smell right." I thanked him and hung up, my mind racing. They were trying to buy property in the same town where Richard had dreamed of us retiring. But why the answer came when I researched property values in Sunset Cove. The beachfront had exploded in value with developers paying premium prices for teardowns to build luxury condos. They weren't interested in a family beach house. They wanted an investment to flip. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with all the evidence spread before me. Ruth's 20-year log of abandonment, the inheritance from Dorothy, the medical reports and false claims, the recordings of their scheming, the monthly meetings to plan their takeover. For the first time in my life, I felt truly alone. Not the surface loneliness of quiet holidays, but the deep isolation of realizing the children I devoted my life to raising saw me as nothing more than an obstacle to their financial gain. But Dorothy's words echoed in my mind, "It's time to choose yourself." I opened my laptop and began searching for beach houses in Sunset Cove. If my children wanted to play games with my future, they were about to learn that their mother had been paying attention all along. The waves in the photos seemed to whisper promises of new beginnings. I fell asleep that night to the sound of recorded ocean waves, dreaming of a life where Mother's Day would no longer mean waiting for calls that never came. The drive to Sunset Cove took 3 hours through winding Connecticut roads that gradually gave way to the rocky Massachusetts coastline. I'd left before dawn, telling no one about my destination. The February morning was crisp, but clear perfect for what I hoped would be a life-changing day. The town appeared like something from a postcard as I crested the final hill. White clapboard houses with weathered shingles lined the streets, their windows reflecting the morning sun off the Atlantic. The harbor was dotted with lobster boats returning from their early runs, gulls wheeling overhead in the salt-scented air. Harold Wells' real estate office sat on Main Street between a bakery that perfumed the air with cinnamon and a bookshop with wind chimes singing in the breeze. Harold himself was waiting, a distinguished man in his 70s with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Mrs. Henderson, He greeted warmly, though his expression held curiosity. After our phone conversation about your children, I wasn't sure I'd hear from you again. Their behavior convinced me I needed to see this town for myself, I admitted. My late husband dreamed of us retiring here. I think it's time I honored that dream. Harold's face softened. I'm glad you came. I have several properties to show you, but there's one in particular I think you need to see. It's not officially listed yet. The owner is particular about who he'll sell to. We drove through the town in Harold's silver sedan past the library where a children's story hour was gathering, past the community center advertising senior yoga and art classes. Everything about Sunset Cove felt like home, in a way my Connecticut suburb never had. The house sat at the end of Sandpiper Lane, where the road curved to embrace a small bluff overlooking the ocean. It was a classic New England coastal home, 3 stories of weathered cedar shingles with white trim and green shutters. A wraparound porch held rocking chairs that seemed to beckon and gardens that even in winter showed promise of summer glory. But it was the view that stole my breath. The Atlantic stretched endlessly before us, waves creating a symphony against the rocks below. A private stairway led down to a small beach where driftwood and shells waited to be discovered. 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, updated kitchen while maintaining the original charm, Harold was saying, but I was already in love. The owner is Bradley Thornton. He's 93 and moving to an assisted living facility near his daughter in California. He's turned down 5 offers in the past year. Why, I asked, running my hand along the porch railing, already imagining morning coffee while watching the sunrise. He wants the right buyer, someone who will love the house, not just see dollar signs. Developers have been circling like sharks, offering well over asking price. He's refused them all. Inside the house exceeded my dreams. Original hardwood floors gleamed under large windows that flooded every room with ocean light. The kitchen had been lovingly updated with modern appliances, while keeping the vintage charm. A stone fireplace dominated the living room, and built-in bookshelves lined the walls of what would be perfect as Richard's long-imagined study. The master bedroom faced the ocean with a private balcony. I stood there imagining waking to the sound of waves instead of suburban lawn mowers and the distant hum of interstate traffic. Mr. Thornton is actually here, Harold mentioned. He likes to check on the house daily. Would you like to meet him? Bradley Thornton sat in the sunroom, a dignified gentleman with silver hair and eyes the color of the sea behind him. His handshake was firm despite his age. Harold tells me you're looking for a home, not an investment, he said, studying me carefully. That's rare these days. My husband dreamed of living by the ocean, I told him. He passed 5 years ago without seeing that dream realized. I'm here to live it for both of us. Something in his expression shifted. My Clara loved this house. We raised 4 children here, hosted 37 Thanksgiving dinners, celebrated 50 anniversaries. When she passed last year, my daughter insisted I couldn't manage alone. She's probably right, but leaving feels like abandoning Clara's memory. I understand, I said, and I did. A house holds more than just people. It holds the love that filled it. We talked for an hour. I told him about Richard, about the journal I'd found with his beach house dreams. He shared stories of Clara, pointing out her rose garden visible through the window, the bench where she'd watch their grandchildren play. Your son and daughter came here last month, he said suddenly. Talked about the development potential, how many units they could fit after demolition. They actually used the word tear down about my Clara's home. I'm sorry, I said, genuinely ashamed of my children's behavior. They weren't representing my wishes. I know, Bradley smiled. Harold did some checking after they left. Told me about you, about your situation. I've been hoping you'd come. He named a price that made Harold's eyebrows rise. $3.2 million was the listing price, but Bradley offered it for $2.5 million. Mr. Thornton. I started, but he raised his hand. I've already turned down $3.8 from a developer. This isn't about money, Mrs. Henderson. It's about Clara's roses blooming for someone who'll appreciate them. It's about those kitchen windows staying clear for someone who'll actually watch the sunrise Can you pay cash? I don't want any financing delays or complications. Yes, I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. I can pay cash. The next weeks passed in a blur of paperwork and preparation. Patricia Hartley reviewed every document ensuring my purchase was ironclad and protected. I hired a security company from Boston to install a state-of-the-art system with cameras covering every angle of the property. Planning on Fort Knox, the installer, Mike, had joked. Just being cautious. I'd replied, not mentioning my concerns about family visitors with questionable intentions. During my trips to oversee the installation, I met Carlos Martinez, the police officer who patrolled the beachfront area. He was young, maybe 35, with a warm smile and professional demeanor. Mrs. Henderson, welcome to Sunset Cove, he greeted during one of his foot patrols. Harold mentioned you'd bought the Thornton place. It's nice to see it going to someone who'll appreciate it. We chatted about the town, and something in my expression must have revealed my concerns because his tone became more serious. If you ever have any security concerns, here's my direct number. He offered handing me a business card. We take care of our residents here, especially those living alone. Later, over coffee at the bakery, he shared something personal. My mother lives alone in Florida. My siblings only visit when they need something. I understand the worry. If you ever need anything, even just someone to check on the house when you're away, call me. I appreciated his kindness more than he knew. In Sunset Cove, I was finding something I'd lost in my old neighborhood, a community that looked out for each other. My best friend Susan from book club was the only person I told about the purchase initially. She'd driven up with me one weekend to see it, her excitement infectious. Kate, it's perfect. Oh, look at this kitchen. We could host book club here. Imagine discussing novels with that ocean view. She helped me plan the logistics of moving without alerting my children. We packed boxes labeled as donations, stored belongings in her garage, created elaborate alibis for my frequent absences. This is like a spy novel, she laughed one afternoon, wrapping my grandmother's china. Operation Beach Liberation. Bradley Thornton left me a letter on closing day along with Clara's recipe box and a photo album of the house through the decades. Dear Kate, he'd written. Clara always said, houses choose their people. This house has chosen you. In the back of the recipe box, you'll find her rose food formula. The climbers on the south wall are 40 years old. Please be patient with them. The third step from the bottom on the beach stairs creaks but is solid. It's been warning us about visitors since 1972. The sunrise is best from the kitchen in winter, the porch in summer. May you find the peace here that Clara and I treasured. Welcome home. I cried reading it, understanding the trust he'd placed in me. This wasn't just a real estate transaction. It was a passing of guardianship. My first night in the house, I sat on the porch watching the stars reflect on the water. The sound of waves replaced the silence I'd grown accustomed to. Inside, my few belongings looked sparse, but right in the generous rooms. Tomorrow, I'd begin making it truly mine, but tonight was for gratitude. My phone buzzed with a text from Susan. How's the first night in paradise? Peaceful, I replied, and meant it. As I prepared for bed in the master suite, I found one more surprise. Tucked in the closet was an envelope marked, for the new owner from Emma Wells Harold's wife. Inside was a letter that made me sink onto the window seat in shock. Dear Kate, I hope it's you reading this. Harold told me about your children's visit last year when they tried to buy this house. We were college roommates. You probably don't remember me as Emma Patterson from freshman English. I followed your life from afar, watched you raise those children who never deserved you. When Harold described the woman interested in the Thornton place, I knew it had to be you. I told him to make sure you got it no matter what. I'm fighting cancer and won't see the outcome. But I wanted you to know. You were always meant to have your beach house. Stop waiting for others to value you. The ocean doesn't wait for permission to be magnificent. Neither should you. Love, Emma. I remembered her then. Bright-eyed Emma who'd written poetry about seascapes and dreams. We'd lost touch after graduation life pulling us in different directions. Yet somehow, decades later, she'd orchestrated this gift. That night, listening to the waves through my open window, I felt the threads of my new life weaving together. The house, the town, the people, all of it felt like destiny, delayed but not denied. Tomorrow would bring challenges. My children would eventually discover my move. There would be confrontations and accusations. But tonight in my beach house with the ocean singing its ancient lullaby, I was exactly where I belonged. For the first time in years, I looked forward to Mother's Day. April arrived with a burst of seaside spring that painted Sunset Cove in watercolors. My garden, Clara's garden. Now mine exploded with daffodils and early roses that climbed the arbor facing the sea. I'd been living in the beach house for 2 months each day, reinforcing my decision to claim this life for myself. The morning I decided to break my silence started like any other. Coffee on the porch watching fishing boats chase the sunrise when I realized Mother's Day was only 3 weeks away. 37 previous ones had passed in painful silence. This one would be different. At my kitchen table, the one I'd bought from a local craftsman who used reclaimed shipwood, I wrote 3 identical cards. Simple cream-colored cards with embossed seashells I'd found at the stationery shop on Main Street. My handwriting, usually flowing, was deliberate and careful. Dear Thomas, I wrote on the first one. This Mother's Day, I'll be celebrating at my new beach house. You're welcome to visit. Love, Mom. I included only the address 47 Sandpiper Lane, Sunset Cove, Massachusetts. No phone number, no explanation, no plea. Just facts. The same message went to Jennifer and Matthew. I sealed each envelope, addressed them carefully, and walked to the post office. Meredith, the postmistress, who'd already learned my coffee order and book preferences, smiled as she stamped them. Special occasions, she asked, noting the quality of the envelopes. You could say that, I replied. Time to see who really wants to be part of my life. She gave me a knowing look. Small towns understand family complications without needing details. I'd barely returned home when my phone erupted. Thomas called first, his surgeon's voice sharp with disbelief and something else. Calculation. Mother, what is this about a beach house? How could you possibly afford property in Sunset Cove? I've checked and homes there start at $2 million. Have you lost your mind? Hello to you too, Thomas, I said calmly, watching a seal pop its head above the waves beyond my window. I'm fine, thank you for asking. How are Diane and the children? Don't deflect, this is serious. If someone scammed you, if you've been manipulated into some reverse mortgage situation, we need to act immediately. I'm calling Adult Protective Services. You do what you feel is necessary. I said, my voice steady as the horizon. I'll see you on Mother's Day if you choose to come. I hung up while he was still sputtering. Jennifer called within minutes, her lawyer voice in full cross-examination mode. Mother, I need you to listen very carefully. What you've done could be considered financial elder abuse. Whoever convinced you to buy this property clearly took advantage of your vulnerable state. As your daughter and an attorney, I'm obligated to investigate this immediately. Investigate away, I replied, pouring myself more coffee with a steady hand. Though I'd think you'd be happy your mother finally has her dream home. Dream home, Mom, you can't just buy a beach house. Not without consulting family, not without proper financial planning. This is exactly the kind of impulsive behavior that suggests cognitive decline. Is it impulsive if someone dreams of it for 40 years? I asked. Goodbye, Jennifer. Happy early Mother's Day to you, too. Matthew's call came through Sharon, of course. Her voice dripped with false concern like honey laced with poison. Mom Henderson, we just got your card. Matthew's beside himself with worry. A beach house. At your age alone. What if you fall? What if there's a storm you're not thinking clearly? I'm thinking more clearly than I have in years, I told her, watching my neighbor Grace walk by with her golden retriever, both of us waving. Will you and Matthew be joining us for Mother's Day? Joining you, Mom. We're coming to bring you home where you belong. This fantasy has to stop. You're not well. I'm excellent, actually. The sea air is wonderful for my health. Dr. Chen can confirm that if you'd like to call her. The mention of my doctor produced a telling silence before Sharon recovered. "We'll be there, Mother Henderson, with help." The next 2 weeks became a chess match played through phones and intermediaries. Thomas called my bank trying to access my account information out of concern for elder fraud. The bank manager, following the protocols Patricia Hartley and I had established, informed him that without proper authorization, he'd be reported for attempted fraud himself. Jennifer went further, filing a report with Massachusetts Elder Services, suggesting I was being financially exploited. The social worker who came to investigate found me hosting a book club meeting, 12 lucid women discussing Steinbeck, while eating my homemade coffee cake. She left with a recipe and an apology for wasting my time. Matthew tried technology, attempting to hack into my email and financial accounts. What he didn't know was that Susan's grandson, a cybersecurity expert, had helped me lock everything down with 2-factor authentication and security questions my children couldn't answer. "What was your first pet's name?" Easy for me. Buttons the cat I'd had before marriage. My children had never asked about my life before them. During this siege, I wasn't idle. I called Officer Martinez, explaining my concerns about Mother's Day. "They're planning something," I told him over coffee at the bakery. "My daughter mentioned bringing help. I'm worried they might try to force me to leave." Carlos listened professionally, but with personal understanding. "Force you? Are you afraid of physical confrontation?" "Not physical, legal. They've been building a case that I'm incompetent. I think they might bring a lawyer or doctor to declare me unable to care for myself." He pulled out his notebook. "Here's what we'll do. I'll be on patrol that day close by. If you feel threatened or coerced in any way, call me directly. Also, Massachusetts law is very specific about elder autonomy. Unless they have court-ordered guardianship, they can't make you do anything. Would you—" I hesitated, then forged ahead. "Would you consider being nearby when they arrive? Maybe checking on a neighbor or something?" Carlos smiled. "Mrs. Henderson, it just so happens I always patrol Sandpiper Lane on Sundays. Multiple times if it's a holiday. Lots of tourists, you understand." Relief flooded through me. "Thank you." "There's more you could do," he suggested. "Massachusetts is a 2-party consent state for recordings, but security cameras on your own property are legal. Make sure they're visible. Sometimes just knowing they're being recorded keeps people civil." I took his advice, adding more obvious cameras to my existing system. Then I made another call, this one to Richard's mother, Helen. At 89, she lived in an assisted living facility in Rhode Island, still sharp and increasingly bitter about her grandchildren's neglect. "Kate, dear," she said when I explained the situation. "Those children ignored me the moment Richard died. Haven't seen them in 5 years. You want me there, I'll come." "It might be unpleasant, Helen. They're not going to be happy." Her laugh was steely. "Good. Someone needs to tell them what disappointments they've become. Richard would be ashamed." Next, I called Susan, my book club general. Within hours, she'd mobilized the entire group. They'd be having a spontaneous beach picnic at the public access near my house on Mother's Day. 12 witnesses who just happened to be nearby. Susan grinned over wine that evening. "We've got your back, Kate." Patricia Hartley prepared a folder of documentation, my medical reports, cognitive evaluations, financial records showing prudent management, the security of my assets in trusts. She also had cease and desist letters ready if my children persisted in their harassment. "I'll be on call that day," she assured me. "One phone call and I'll be there within an hour." The final piece fell into place when I hired Diana Morrison, a court reporter recommended by Patricia. She'd sit in my study out of sight, but able to document everything said in the living room through the intercom system. "I've done this before," Diana said, her demeanor professional. "Family confrontations over money can turn ugly. Official transcripts protect everyone." By the eve of Mother's Day, my fortress was ready. Cameras recording witnesses, prepared law enforcement aware legal documentation assembled. I'd even prepared guest rooms on the optimistic chance my children came with love instead of litigation, though I wasn't holding my breath. That evening, Harold called with an unexpected warning. "Kate thought you should know. That lawyer, Stephen Wolfe, was asking about your property this morning. He specializes in conservatorships and elder law from the family's perspective. He's known for aggressive tactics. Was he alone? No, your daughter was with him. They were photographing your house from the street. I told Officer Martinez. So they were bringing legal counsel. The final insult, not just ignoring Mother's Day, but weaponizing it. That night, Helen arrived still spry despite her age, eyes blazing with protective fury. I've watched them hurt you for years, she said, settling into the guest room overlooking the garden. Richard always made excuses, said they were busy. Busy being selfish, more like. Tomorrow, they face consequences. As I prepared for bed, I stood on my balcony, breathing in the salt air. The ocean was calm tonight, moonlight painting a silver path across the water. Tomorrow would bring storms of a different kind, but I was ready. My phone buzzed with a text from Thomas. Mother, I've consulted with colleagues. Your behavior indicates serious issues. We're coming to help you whether you want it or not. Be ready at 10 a.m. I deleted it without responding and went to bed falling asleep to the sound of waves that didn't care about my children's threats. The ocean endured all storms. Tomorrow, so would I. Mother's Day dawned crystal clear, the kind of New England morning that poets write about and photographers chase. I woke at 6, not from anxiety, but from anticipation. Today, the patterns of 37 years would shatter like waves against the rocks below my window. Helen was already in the kitchen when I came downstairs making coffee with the efficiency of someone who'd raised a family. Couldn't sleep either, I asked, accepting the mug gratefully. Oh, I slept wonderfully, she said, her eyes sharp behind wire-rimmed glasses. Best sleep I've had in years. Today, Catherine, we stopped being doormats. We prepared breakfast together, the kind of spread I used to make when my children were young and still came to my table. Fresh fruit salad, homemade blueberry muffins, eggs Benedict with hollandaise made from scratch. The dining room table was set with my grandmother's China fresh roses from the garden in crystal vases. You're still hoping, Helen observed, watching me adjust a place setting. Old habits, I admitted. Maybe seeing a real home, a real welcome will remind them of what family should be. Helen squeezed my shoulder but said nothing. We both knew hope was a luxury I could barely afford. At 9:30, Officer Martinez walked by on his patrol, giving me a subtle nod. Through the kitchen window, I could see Susan and the book club ladies setting up their picnic at the beach, access their timing perfect. Diana Morrison arrived professional in her court reporter attire and set up in the study. Remember, she said, testing the intercom connection, speak clearly and don't talk over each other if possible. I'll capture everything. At 9:45, my phone buzzed with security alerts. 3 vehicles were approaching: a black Cadillac Escalade, a silver Mercedes, and a white BMW. They parked in formation at my driveway's entrance as if staging an intervention. Through my front window, I watched my children emerge. Thomas stepped out first, his surgeon's bearing rigid with determination. He'd aged in the years since Richard's funeral, gray threading through hair that had once been golden like his father's. Jennifer followed from the Mercedes, her power suit immaculate, despite the casual setting, carrying a leather briefcase that promised trouble. Matthew and Sharon emerged from the BMW, him looking uncomfortable, her eyes scanning my property with naked greed. From the Escalade came a man I didn't recognize, tall, silver-haired, carrying himself with the predatory confidence of someone used to intimidating the elderly. Stephen Wolfe, I presumed. They didn't come to the front door like family. They assembled on my lawn like an invasion force, conferring in low voices while pointing at my home. Not one of them carried flowers or a card. I opened the door before they could ring the bell, Helen beside me. Happy Mother's Day to me, I said calmly. Please come in. The shock on their faces at seeing their grandmother was almost comical. None had visited her since Richard's funeral. Grandma Helen, Thomas sputtered, what are you doing here? Celebrating Mother's Day with someone who actually remembers I exist, Helen replied tartly. Close your mouth, Thomas. You look like a fish. They filed in my children, avoiding both our eyes. I led them to the living room where the morning light streamed through windows overlooking the ocean. They didn't comment on the view, the house, or the careful preparations. They arranged themselves like a tribunal wolf at the center with my children flanking him. Mrs. Henderson, Wolf, began without preamble or pleasantries. I'm Stephen Wolf, attorney at law. Your children have retained me out of deep concern for your welfare. This impulsive purchase of an expensive property, isolated from family and support systems, indicates potential cognitive compromise. We're here to help you make better decisions. Would anyone like coffee muffins? I offered, gesturing to the spread I'd prepared. Mom, this isn't a social visit, Jennifer snapped. This is serious. You've spent millions on a beach house you don't need, can't maintain, and shouldn't be living in alone. Don't need, I laughed, surprising them. I've dreamed of this house for 40 years. Your father saved for it for 20. I'd say that's the opposite of impulsive. Dreams are fine, but this is reality, Thomas interjected, using his doctor lecturing patient voice. You're 67, living alone, making major financial decisions without consulting family. These are classic signs of dementia onset. Is that your professional diagnosis? Helen asked sweetly. Based on what examination? Or are you just upset that your mother spent her own money without asking permission? Grandma, respectfully, this doesn't concern you, Jennifer said. Doesn't it? I'm 89, living successfully on my own. Should I expect you to show up with lawyers to steal my assets too? Wolf cleared his throat, opening his briefcase. Let's focus on the matter at hand. Mrs. Henderson, we have documentation of concerning behavior, missed appointments, reports of confusion, isolation from family, all fabricated, I said calmly. I have documentation too, Mr. Wolf, including attempts to access my medical records under false pretenses and fraudulent reports to elder services. Would you like to compare? His composure flickered but held. Your children are trying to protect you. This house is worth over $3 million. At your age, that money should be preserved, perhaps managed by family who have your best interests at heart. Like the family who tried to buy this exact property last year to flip to developers, I asked, watching Jennifer's face flush. Yes, Mr. Wells told me about that visit. That was research, Jennifer protested. We were looking into investment opportunities. Using my name, I pressed, asking about elderly sellers and conservatorships. Silence fell like a stone into still water. Sharon, who'd been photographing everything with her phone, finally spoke. Mother Henderson, you have to understand how this looks. You suddenly buying a mansion, living like some rich widow. It's not normal. People will talk. The family reputation. The family? Helen laughed, a sharp sound like breaking glass. What family? The one that hasn't visited me in 5 years. The one that missed 37 Mother's Days. That family. We've been busy, Matthew mumbled the first words he'd spoken. Too busy for a phone call. A card, I asked him directly. But not too busy for monthly meetings planning my conservatorship. The shock on their faces was genuine this time. Wolf recovered first. Mrs. Henderson, if you've been stalking your children, that's another concerning behavior. My former student manages the restaurant where they meet, I said simply. Small world. She thought I should know my children were planning my future without me. Thomas stood abruptly, pacing to the window. This is ridiculous. Mom, you're not well. Coming here, spending Dad's money on this fantasy. Richard's money. I stood too, my voice steady but forceful. I worked every day of our marriage. I managed our finances. Our investments raised you 3, while your father built his practice. Every dollar we saved was equally mine, and it wasn't his money or even our money that bought this house. What are you talking about? Jennifer demanded. Aunt Dorothy left me her estate, $2.8 million. She saw what you've become and left it to the only family member who actually cared about her. The room erupted. Thomas spun from the window, face flushed. Jennifer shot to her feet, lawyer mode, fully engaged. Sharon's calculator face was running numbers, while Matthew looked stunned. That's impossible, Thomas shouted. We're her family too. She can't just... You must have manipulated her. Like you're trying to manipulate me, I asked quietly. Wolf raised a hand for silence. Mrs. Henderson, if there's been a substantial inheritance that actually strengthens our case, someone your age suddenly coming into money is extremely vulnerable to scams, poor decisions. Like hiring a lawyer to steal from their mother, Helen suggested. Before Wolf could respond, footsteps sounded on my porch. Officer Martinez appeared in the doorway I'd left open. Mrs. Henderson just checking on that noise complaint, he said professionally, though no one had complained. Everything all right here? Just a family discussion, Officer Ga, I said. Though Mr. Wolf was just leaving. Weren't you, Mr. Wolf? The lawyer assessed the uniformed officer and made a calculation. We're not finished here. Actually, you are... Patricia Hartley's voice came from behind Carlos. My lawyer entered impeccable in her weekend casual wear that still screamed legal authority. Stephen, what a surprise. Still doing those borderline illegal elder conservatorships. Wolf's face went pale. Patricia, this is a private family matter. Is it? Because from what I heard from the porch, it sounded like conspiracy to commit elder financial abuse. Officer Martinez, did you hear the same? Carlos nodded gravely. I did hear concerning statements about taking control of Mrs. Henderson's assets without her consent. This is entrapment, Jennifer sputtered, her legal training kicking in. This is protection. Patricia countered, then looked at Wolf. Stephen, I believe you're currently under investigation by the state bar for 3 similar cases. Would you like to make it 4? The temperature in the room seemed to drop 20 degrees. Wolf's confident facade cracked like thin ice. Additionally, Patricia continued producing a folder. I have here sworn affidavits from Mrs. Henderson's physician stating she's in excellent mental health, bank records showing prudent financial management, and a rather interesting report about 3 adult children with severe financial problems trying to access their mother's accounts. Shall I continue? Sharon, seeing the tide turning, tried a different approach. This is all a misunderstanding. We're just worried about Mom. Right, Matthew. Matthew looked at his wife, then at me, something shifting in his expression. Mom, Also, I interrupted, pulling out my phone. I should mention that this entire conversation has been recorded by my security system and transcribed by a court reporter. Every threat, every lie, every admission of conspiracy. You can't record us without consent, Jennifer protested. Security cameras on private property are perfectly legal, Carlos informed her. And I believe Massachusetts law is quite clear about documenting potential elder abuse. The room fell silent except for the sound of waves through the open windows. My children looked at each other, then at Wolf, who was calculating his exit strategy. Then Helen played her final card, pulling out her own phone. I've also been recording. One-party consent in Massachusetts, right, Patricia? And I'm definitely a party to this conversation. That's correct, Patricia confirmed with a smile that would have frightened sharks. Wolf stood abruptly. I need to confer with my clients privately. Feel free to use the porch, I offered. The view is lovely. They filed out like scolded children, leaving Helen, Patricia, Carlos, and me in sudden quiet. Through the window, we could see them arguing, Wolf gesticulating wildly while my children looked increasingly panicked. Well played, Kate, Patricia said softly. How do you feel? I considered the question, looking around the room where I'd hoped to host a different kind of Mother's Day. The untouched food, the empty place settings, the wilting hope of reconciliation. Sad, I admitted, but not sorry. Helen took my hand. They made their choices 37 years ago. Today they're just facing consequences. Outside, the argument intensified. Wolf was backing toward his Escalade while Jennifer followed, clearly upset. Thomas stood with fists clenched while Sharon appeared to be berating Matthew. The unified front had crumbled. What happens now? I asked Patricia. That depends on them. If they're smart, they'll retreat and reconsider. If not, she shrugged. We have enough evidence to file harassment charges, restraining orders if necessary. The attempted financial abuse alone could result in criminal charges. Through it all, Diana had continued her silent work in the study, documenting every word. The official record would show the truth. a mother defending herself against children who saw her only as a bank account. As we watched, Wolf got in his vehicle and left, not waiting for the others. My children stood in my driveway looking lost without their legal champion. For a moment, I saw them as they'd been, small needing guidance, looking to me for answers. But they weren't those children anymore, hadn't been for decades. Should I go talk to them? I wondered aloud. Let them come to you, Helen advised. If they have anything real to say, they'll come back. If not, I'd have my answer. 37 Mother's Days of silence would become 3839 forever. But this time, I wouldn't be waiting by the phone. I'd be walking my beach, tending my roses, living my life. The waves continued their eternal rhythm, indifferent to human drama. I found comfort in that constancy, that reminder that some things endured regardless of our small griefs. My children remained in the driveway, but I turned away from the window. Whatever they decided, I was done begging for crumbs of affection. The ocean had taught me that. You can't hold back the tide, but you can choose where to build your life. Who wants coffee? I asked, moving toward the kitchen. And Helen, tell me about your watercolor classes. I'm thinking of taking some myself. Behind us, car doors slammed and engines started. But in my bright kitchen with true family around me, I barely heard them leave. The silence after my children's cars disappeared lasted exactly 90 seconds before my front door burst open again. But instead of my children, Susan led the charge with 11 book club members in tow, their beach picnic abandoned for a more important mission. Kate Henderson, you brilliant woman, Susan exclaimed, enveloping me in a hug. We could hear that lawyer's voice from the beach. The nerve of them. Patricia and Carlos exchanged amused glances as my living room filled with protective, indignant women ranging from their 50s to 80s. Meredith from the post office was there, along with Grace, my dog-walking neighbor, and even the bakery owner, Claire. I brought reinforcement cookies, Claire announced, producing a box of my favorites. Figured you might need them after that ambush. Did they really try to steal your house? Grace asked, her usually gentle face fierce with outrage. They tried. Helen confirmed, helping me serve coffee to our unexpected guests. But our Kate was ready for them. As we were settling in, explaining the morning's drama, Diana emerged from the study with her equipment. Mrs. Henderson, I've completed the initial transcript. Every word is documented. I'll have the official version ready by tomorrow. Send copies to my office, Patricia instructed. We'll need them if this escalates. Carlos, still on duty, excused himself, but not before reassuring me. I'll increase patrols past your house for the next few days. Sometimes people come back when they've had time to get angrier. Call immediately if you see them. The book club ladies stayed until noon, their presence a warm barrier against the morning's ugliness. They helped clear the untouched breakfast-packed leftovers for me to enjoy later and made plans for our next meeting at my house. With wine, Meredith declared. Lots of wine. After they left, Patricia, Helen, and I sat in the sunroom processing what had happened. The lawyer in Patricia was already strategizing. They'll regroup, she predicted. Wolf will distance himself now that he knows I'm involved, and Carlos witnessed everything. But your children won't give up. Not with their financial situations. What do you know about Wolf? I asked. Patricia's smile was sharp. Stephen Wolf has been skirting the edge of legal ethics for years. He specializes in helping families gain control of elderly relatives' assets. 3 current investigations, 2 suspended sentences, and a reputation that makes judges very careful when he appears. Your children couldn't have chosen worse. Or better from our perspective, Helen added. His involvement makes them look predatory. My phone buzzed with a text from Thomas. Mom, we need to talk without lawyers and police. Can we meet somewhere neutral? I showed it to Patricia, who nodded. Response. My lawyer will contact yours to arrange any meetings. Don't engage directly. As I typed the response, another text arrived, this one from Jennifer. You've made a huge mistake. This isn't over. Save that one, Patricia advised. Threats in writing are always helpful. The afternoon passed quietly. Helen and I walked the beach, her arm linked through mine for stability on the sand. She shared stories about Richard I'd never heard about his childhood dreams of oceanside living, about how he'd talked about me before we'd even started dating. He knew you were special from the start, she said, watching sandpipers race the waves. Told me once that you were the only person who saw him as more than his future medical degree. The boy was besotted. I wish he could see this place, I said softly. Oh, Catherine, he does. Every time you smile at this view, every peaceful morning you have here, Richard's dream is alive. Don't let those ungrateful children taint that. That evening, as Helen napped and I prepared dinner, my security system alerted me to a car approaching. But instead of family, Harold Wells walked up my path carrying a bottle of wine and a concerned expression. Kate, I heard about this morning, he said when I greeted him. Small-town telegraph, are you all right? I invited him in, touched by his concern. Over wine on the porch, I gave him the abbreviated version of events. I knew something was off when they visited last year, he said. The way they talked about you like you were already gone. No warmth, just calculations. Emma would be proud of how you handled them. I found her letter, I told him. I had no idea she remembered me from college. Harold smiled sadly. She followed your life through Alumni Magazine's mutual friends. When she got sick, she made me promise to look out for you if you ever came to Sunset Cove. Make sure Kate gets her beach house, Harold, she'd say. She's earned it. We talked until the stars came out, Harold sharing stories about the town, the neighbors, the rhythms of coastal life. When he left, I felt more anchored to this place, these people who'd shown more kindness in months than my children had in years. That night, Patricia called with intelligence. My contacts say Wolf has officially withdrawn from representing your children. Apparently, they couldn't pay his retainer, and he won't work on contingency for a case this shaky. So what's their next move? I asked. Without Wolf, they'll either give up or get desperate. I'm betting on desperate. Keep your security system active and don't go anywhere alone for a few days. She was right. The next morning, Officer Martinez called to report Thomas had been asking questions at the police station about wellness checks and emergency interventions. I told him politely that you'd been seen walking the beach at dawn perfectly healthy, Carlos said. But he seemed agitated, almost accusatory, suggesting we weren't taking elder welfare seriously. Let me guess, he filed a report. Tried to. The desk sergeant who happens to be my training officer suggested he provide evidence of neglect or move along. Your son didn't take it well. By Tuesday, their new strategy became clear. A process server appeared at my door with papers. My children were petitioning for a competency hearing. They'd found a cheaper lawyer willing to file the basic paperwork. Patricia was at my house within an hour reviewing the documents with disgust. This is harassment through legal channels. They're hoping you'll cave rather than fight. What do I need to do? Appear at the hearing, show the judge you're competent, and then we countersue for harassment and attempted elder abuse. This could actually work in our favor. Judges hate frivolous competency claims. Helen, who'd extended her stay indefinitely, was furious. Those children need more than legal consequences. They need public shaming. No, I said firmly. We handle this properly through the system. I won't stoop to their level. But the universe had other plans. That afternoon, Amy Chen, my former student who'd first alerted me to their meetings, called with urgency in her voice. Mrs. H, you need to know. Your kids were here at lunch with another lawyer. But here's the thing. I recognized him. James Wolfe Stevens' son. He's been disbarred, but apparently still helps Daddy with cases off the books. They hired Wolfe's son? I asked, incredulous. Gets worse. They were looking at photos of your house discussing how to prove you're dangerously isolated and showing signs of hoarding valuable assets. They mentioned hiring a private investigator to document your erratic behavior. I thanked Amy and immediately called Patricia, who laughed darkly. They're really determined to destroy themselves, aren't they? Using a disbarred lawyer is illegal. If James Wolfe is practicing law without a license, can we prove it? Amy's testimony, plus I'll bet they were stupid enough to text or email about it. Give me 48 hours. Those 48 hours revealed the depth of my children's desperation. The private investigator they'd hired was caught by Carlos trying to photograph me through my windows. Turned out he had a record for stalking and immediately folded when threatened with arrest, admitting the Hendersons had hired him. Jennifer's law firm, already investigating her for financial irregularities, received an anonymous tip about her using company resources to research elder law for personal gain. The tip included screenshots of emails sent from her work account. Thomas faced his own crisis when the medical board received a complaint about him attempting to access a patient's records without authorization. Mine. Dr. Chen had filed it weeks ago, but the investigation was just beginning. Matthew's situation imploded when Sharon filed for divorce, citing financial malfeasance and emotional abuse. She discovered he'd borrowed against their house without her knowledge to fund his failing startup. By Thursday, when Patricia's research came through, the reversal was complete. She'd found emails between my children and James Wolfe, clearly showing they knew he was disbarred, but hired him anyway because he was cheap and willing to play dirty. "This is a criminal conspiracy," Patricia explained, spreading the evidence across my dining table. "Hiring a disbarred attorney, false reports to authorities, stalking attempted financial abuse. Your children have given us everything we need." To do what I asked, though I suspected the answer. To file criminal charges, to get restraining orders, to ensure they never bother you again. I stared at the evidence of my children's complete moral collapse. 3 people I'd raised, loved, sacrificed for, reduced to criminals, trying to steal from their mother. The reversal wasn't just legal, it was karmic. But as I sat there, Helen's hand on my shoulder, I realized something else had reversed. For 37 years, I'd waited for them to love me, defined my worth by their absence. Now, surrounded by evidence of their betrayal, I felt free. Their actions had severed the last threads of obligation I'd felt. "Do it," I told Patricia. "File everything. But also," I paused thinking, "offer them one chance. If they attend family counseling, complete community service, and write genuine letters of apology to everyone they've wronged, including Helen, I'll consider not pressing charges." Patricia raised an eyebrow. "That's generous." "That's motherhood," I corrected. "Even now, I can't help hoping they'll choose to be better, but I won't wait for it anymore." Helen squeezed my shoulder. "You're a better woman than I would be." "No," I said, looking out at my ocean. "I'm just a woman who finally knows her worth isn't determined by her children's failures." The waves continued their endless dance, and I found peace in their constancy. Tomorrow would bring whatever it brought, but tonight in my dream house with my chosen family, I was exactly where I belonged. The reversal was complete, but my story was just beginning. 6 months after that tumultuous Mother's Day, I stood in my garden, pruning Clara's roses, while November wind carried the salt scent of home. The climbing roses on the south wall, 40 years old as Bradley had warned, had responded to patience and care, with a final autumn bloom that defied the season. "Catherine, you've got company," Helen called from the porch where she was sketching the seascape. She'd moved in permanently after that Mother's Day, selling her assisted living apartment to become my housemate, and more importantly, my chosen family. I looked up to see 3 figures walking hesitantly up my driveway. My children, but barely recognizable as the aggressive invaders from 6 months ago. Thomas had lost weight, his surgeon's arrogance replaced by something humbler. Jennifer's power suit had given way to simple slacks and a sweater. Matthew walked alone. Sharon had taken their children to California after the divorce finalized. "You came," I said, simply setting down my pruning shears but not moving toward them. We finished," Jennifer said, holding out a thick folder. "Everything you required. Family therapy, community service, the letters. All of it." I accepted the folder, noting their nervous glances at Helen, who watched from the porch like a guardian angel with steel wings. "Come inside," I offered. "We'll have tea." They followed me into the kitchen where 6 months ago they'd tried to destroy my life. Now they sat quietly while I prepared Earl Grey, their silence heavy, with what I hoped was reflection. The folder revealed the truth of their transformation: certificates of completion from Dr. Margaret Winters, a family therapist who'd called me privately after their first session to say she'd never seen adult children so disconnected from reality about their parent. It took 3 months before Thomas stopped insisting you were the problem, she'd told me. Jennifer lasted longer, but Matthew broke first, started crying in session 4 about missing his father and taking it out on you. The community service logs showed Thomas volunteering at free clinics, not just the required hours, but continuing beyond. Jennifer had been working at a legal aid society helping elderly people protect themselves from financial abuse. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Matthew taught computer literacy at senior centers, finally understanding the isolation that technology could create between generations. But it was the letters that revealed the depth of their journey. Pages of apologies, not just to me, but to Helen, to Dorothy's memory, to their father's memory, to Amy Chen, for involving her, even to Harold Wells for their behavior at his office. Thomas's letter was the most revealing. Mom, I became a doctor to save lives, but I couldn't save Dad. I blamed you for surviving when he didn't. Dr. Winters helped me see I was angry at death itself, and you were the only target left. I'm sorry for every Mother's Day I missed, every call I didn't make, every time I chose work over family, while claiming family was everything. Jennifer had written, I spent my career protecting other people's assets while trying to steal my own mother's. The shame of that will never fully leave me. When my firm fired me, I thought my life was over. Now I realize it was just beginning. Working at legal aid, I meet elderly people every day who've been betrayed by family. Each one could be you. Each one deserves better. Matthew's was the shortest, but perhaps most honest. Mom, I failed at everything. My business, my marriage, being a son. Sharon was right to leave. But watching you build this new life at 67 gave me hope that I could rebuild too. I'm in therapy twice a week now, not court-ordered anymore, because I want to understand how I became someone who could treat his mother like an ATM. I set the letters aside and looked at my children, really looked at them for the first time in years. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something I'd never seen before, genuine humility. What happens now? Thomas asked quietly. I'd thought about this moment for months, imagined various scenarios from vindictive rejection to tearful reconciliation. But sitting here with the afternoon light streaming through my kitchen windows, I found a middle path. Now we begin, I said. Not where we left off. That relationship is dead. But maybe we can build something new, something honest. We don't deserve, Jennifer started. No, you don't, Helen interrupted from the doorway, but deserving and receiving are different things. Your mother has more grace than I would. I outlined my terms. They could visit, but visits must be planned and respected. No dropping by, no assumptions of welcome. They would continue therapy. They would volunteer in their communities. They would call on holidays, all holidays, even if just to say hello. And they would never, ever again mention my finances, my house, or my life choices, except with respect. If you can't do these things, we'll remain cordial strangers. If you can, maybe we'll become family, real family, not the performance we've been doing for decades. They agreed immediately too quickly, and I held up my hand. Don't answer now, think about it. Talk to Dr. Winters. Make sure you can follow through. I won't survive another betrayal, so I won't risk one. They left an hour later, subdued but somehow lighter. As their cars disappeared down Sandpiper Lane, Helen joined me on the porch. You're kinder than they deserve, she said. Richard would want me to try, I replied. And I'm not doing it for them. I'm doing it for me. To know I gave them one last chance to be the people I raised them to be. The transformation wasn't instant. Trust once shattered rebuilds slowly like sand castles at low tide. But gradually, carefully, we constructed something new. Thomas visited monthly, bringing medical journals to read on my porch while I gardened. He discovered he actually enjoyed the silence, the break from the hospital's chaos. We talked about his work, his recovery from gambling addiction, his efforts to save his marriage. "Diane's willing to try," he told me one afternoon watching the waves. "She says if you can forgive me, maybe she can too." Jennifer came less frequently but more meaningfully. She'd lost her corporate position but found purpose in elder advocacy law. "I'm good at it," she admitted with wonder, "protecting people like you from people like I was." Matthew struggled most. The divorce had devastated him, the loss of his children to California a daily ache. But he channeled it into rebuilding, taking coding jobs to pay off debts, attending therapy, religiously, slowly earning supervised visits with his kids. "Sharon says maybe next summer they can visit you here," he told me one December day. "She trusts you even if she doesn't trust me yet." That first Christmas after reconciliation, they all came for dinner. Not the performance of family we'd done before, but something quieter, realer. Thomas helped Helen with her medications. She'd been diagnosed with mild heart issues. Jennifer and I cooked together, finding rhythm in shared tasks. Matthew fixed my computer and taught Helen to video call her sister in Seattle. There were awkward moments, old patterns trying to reassert themselves. When Jennifer mentioned my nice house, everyone froze until she laughed nervously and said, "I mean, it's beautiful. You chose perfectly." 3 years have passed now. My children aren't perfect, neither am I. But we found something I never expected: honest relationship. They call on Mother's Day now, but also random Tuesdays. They visit for reasons beyond obligation. They've become the support system they tried to destroy. Thomas did save his marriage. He and Diane bought a small cottage 2 towns over, close enough to visit but far enough to respect boundaries. Jennifer met someone at Legal Aid, a social worker who grounds her ambition with compassion. Matthew remains single but has his children for summers, now teaching them to fish off my beach-building sandcastles, where his dreams crashed and reformed. Helen lived with me until last spring when her heart finally whispered enough. She died as she lived, fiercely lovingly holding my hand while looking at the ocean. At her funeral, my children spoke of the grandmother who'd helped save their souls by refusing to excuse their sins. She saw who we'd become. Thomas eulogized and loved us anyway while demanding we do better. That's the greatest gift anyone can give. The Dorothy Foundation, which I'd established with her inheritance, has helped dozens of elderly people escape elder abuse. Jennifer serves on the board using her legal expertise to protect the vulnerable. It's become our family mission, turning our darkest chapter into light for others. This Mother's Day, the 40th since my children were born, dawned like that first one in my beach house. But this time, I woke to the sound of voices downstairs. Thomas making coffee, Jennifer arguing about pancake recipes, Matthew setting the table with careful precision. "Happy Mother's Day, Mom." They chorused when I appeared, and for the first time in 4 decades, I believed them. We spent the day simply: beach walks, garden puttering, meals shared without agenda. As evening approached and they prepared to leave, Jennifer hugged me tightly. "Thank you," she whispered, "for not giving up on us, for showing us how to choose ourselves without losing our humanity, for teaching us it's never too late to change." After they left, I sat on my porch watching the sunset paint the ocean in shades of forgiveness. Officer Martinez walked by on patrol, now Chief Martinez, and waved. Susan appeared with wine and cookies, our weekly tradition. The book club would meet tomorrow discussing stories of resilience and redemption. My phone buzzed with a text from Thomas. "Made it home safely. Love you, Mom. Really love you." 40 years to hear those words with truth behind them. Worth every painful Mother's Day that led here. The ocean continues its eternal dance, teaching the same lesson it always has. Waves may retreat, but they return. Sometimes you must pull back to find your power. Sometimes the tide must go out before it can come in, fuller than before. I'm 70 now, living my dream in Clara's roses and Emma's gifts, surrounded by chosen family and children who finally chose to be family. The path was longer and harder than any mother should walk, but I walked it, and I survived, and I thrived. To anyone listening who's waiting by silent phones, watching empty driveways, making excuses for children who've forgotten you exist, stop waiting. Start living. Your worth isn't measured by their absence. Your value doesn't decrease because they can't see it. Build your life. Find your beach house, whatever that means for you. Choose yourself. And if they come back as mine did, broken and ready to change, make them earn it. Not from cruelty, but from wisdom. Love yourself enough to demand real love in return. Set boundaries like seawalls, not to keep everything out, but to protect what matters from storms. The sun sets now on another Mother's Day, the first one I'll celebrate without Helen, but not alone. Never again alone. I have my ocean, my roses, my chosen tribe and children who finally understand that a mother's love isn't an entitlement, but a gift to be treasured. Tomorrow I'll walk my beach at dawn, tend my garden, live my life fully and freely. The waves will whisper their ancient wisdom, and I'll whisper back, I am enough. I was always enough. Thank you for joining my story. May you find your beach house, your peace, your worth. May you stop waiting for others to validate your existence and start celebrating it yourself. What dreams have you deferred while waiting for someone else's approval? What life have you postponed hoping others would notice? Share your story in the comments below. Like this video if it touched your heart. Subscribe to hear more stories of triumph over family trauma. And share this with someone who needs to hear that their worth isn't determined by anyone else's inability to see it. Remember, you deserve your beach house, whatever form it takes. You deserve peace. You deserve to be chosen by people who choose to show up. From my ocean to your dreams, may you find the courage to stop waiting and start living. May every day be your Mother's Day, a celebration of the amazing person you are with or without anyone else's recognition. The tide always returns. Make sure when it does, it finds you living fully on whatever shore you've claimed as your own. With love and waves of gratitude, Kate.